We've had a really important long-standing partnership with Taiwan, especially in the field of public health. Their response to COVID has been incredible, and frankly, it stacks up pretty well in terms of their transparency compared to certain other entities, and I'm looking forward to going over and being with my colleagues there.
Wow, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar gearing up for her rare high-level trip to Taiwan. The trip will be the highest-level visit by a U.S. cabinet official since 1979. But the move expected to draw fierce backlash from Beijing, and rising tensions between the U.S. and China hit a new high. So is now the right time to make such a bold move? Let's bring in Fox News senior strategic analyst, retired four-star General Jack Keane. General, put this visit in perspective.
Yeah, well, strategically, it's an important visit. After the CCP crushed the autonomy of Hong Kong with their national security law, they just got fed up with the protests. They had taken control completely of Hong Kong, even though it risks it being a financial international hub. I believe the people in Taiwan, the government there, and other strategic observers think that this is encouraging the Chinese Communist Party to possibly make a move on Taiwan. And the foreign minister in Taiwan, Joseph Wu, who I happen to know, by the way, has said as much publicly. So, yes, while this is a diplomatic initiative, 1979, as you mentioned in the introduction, Brian, was the year that President Carter broke off diplomatic relations with Taiwan in favor of diplomatic relations with mainland China. 6 years ago, we had the head of the EPA in the Obama administration visit Taiwan, and that caused a stir. This will cause a more significant stir, to be sure. But I think strategically it's making a statement about our support for Taiwan. And the Trump administration has had the strongest support for Taiwan since we broke off diplomatic relations with them. Through a treaty, we do have the ability to provide military support for them, and this administration has come through with significant increase in military support. Diplomatically, this will cause a pushback from the Chinese Communist Party, to be sure. But nonetheless, it is the right move to send that unequivocal message that the United States is backing Taiwan.
So here's what the Chinese response is. The Chinese ambassador to the U.S., quote, "We are at a very critical moment for relations between the U.S. and China, and in a way, we can say it is unprecedented." Other reports say, does the U.S. really want another Cold War? What do we want?
Well, I think I'll take the president's words in terms of what we want. We want China to be a responsible member of the international community and treat not just the United States, but other nations of the world fairly, to protect their international boundaries, stop harassing them by air and maritime interdiction, stop cyber espionage, stealing their intellectual property, protect, recognize the sovereignty of nations. That is not the behavior of the Chinese Communist Party since they took over, and much more so with the most ambitious, most aggressive, and most malign leader since Mao Zedong that we have in President Xi. So that, I think, is what the international community wants, as does the United States.
Big report in the Wall Street Journal how China has helped Saudi Arabia with their nuclear program. And here's what the Prince Salman said back in 2018. "Without a doubt, if Iran developed a nuclear weapon, nuclear bomb, we will follow suit as soon as possible." And then you got this report that the kingdom's nuclear program has been really coached through and supplied by China. Wait a second. China just signed a trade deal with Iran, the arch enemy of Saudi Arabia. Are they pulling both sides of this?
Yeah, certainly. And here's the reason why. The Chinese Communist Party of mainland China is dependent to 62% of all of their oil comes out of the Middle East. That's why they have a base in Djibouti, and that's why their ships are in that area on a regular basis now. And certainly the deal with Iran is all about that. And they would love to be able to build nuclear power plants in the Middle East for the Gulf state nations and the oil-producing countries. What's happening in the Middle East is that they cannot continue to depend on oil as a single commodity economy. They need to diversify, and particularly when it comes to producing electricity. Thus, that is why many of them, the UAE has just built the first nuclear power plant in the Middle East, and they've got 3 more under construction. That is why Saudi Arabia is considering it, number one, strategically, for the diversification of its economy, but number two, why they are considering the possibility of eventually developing a nuclear weapon is because of Iran's desire to have that.
And guess
I
what,
think
General?
they're a long way from doing that, Brian, but this initial step with China certainly gives us all concerns.
But, General, this is what you've been saying all along, and so has the Trump administration. If you let Iran get a nuclear weapon, their enemies are going to want one, too. And when Europe is slow to get off the mark and enforce anything, they've helped seed this nuclear growth.
Yeah. The most dangerous event that would ever take place since World War II would be the proliferation of nuclear weapons in the Middle East. Because here we have Iran on one side, Israel, and then the Arab states with nuclear weapons, and all the strife that takes place in that part of the world. And it's like lighting a match.
Yep.
And you could have the first nuclear exchange ever in the history of mankind. That's what makes this such a dangerous situation, and why we must never permit the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon, because that's what will start the nuclear proliferation.
I hear you. General Jack Keane, thanks so much. Appreciate your insight.
Yeah, good talking to you, Brian.